Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Welcome to this week's edition of the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. Yes, it is another character build for Vampire the Masquerade V5. Our character-inspired build today is going to focus on a beloved member of Hollywood, somebody that we're all very familiar with, the ever-youthful Paul Rudd. Looking at the different clans, I feel that Paul Rudd is probably best described as a toreador with a weakness for beautiful things. And let's face it, I don't think that Paul Rudd has changed his looks since he was in Clueless. Maybe we're about to expose Paul Rudd. He's got a little vampire blood in him, that guy. Just never ages. Okay, so we have our character sheet. If you just Google Vampire the Masquerade V5 fillable PDF, you're going to find your way to the proper form to fill out. Okay, so Paul Rudd inspired character. We are going to come up with a name a little bit later, but first what we need to do is learn just a tiny bit more about Paul Rudd. So let's just Google this guy. I mean, you're going to have a whole bunch of pictures come up. Look how adorable he is. I mean, seriously. Okay. Anyway, that's not what we're after. Do we want Paul Rudd news? No, we don't want that. We want some Paul Rudd Wikipedia. Paul Rudd. He was born in 1969. He's an American actor and filmmaker. He studied theater at the University of Kansas and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts before his debut in 1992 with the NBC drama series Sisters. He's also been in Clueless, Romeo and Juliet. He was? Oh, that's right. Yeah. He plays the guy that Juliet's parents were trying to set him up with. The guy in the astronaut costume. Remember that? Wet Hot American Summer, of course, Anchorman, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, This Is 40, Mute, The Ideal Home, of course, Ant-Man, in all of the Avenger movies. He's also been on a whole bunch of TV shows like Friends. He was also on Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job, and Parks and Recreation. He's hosted Saturday Night Live a bunch of times. He stars in a dual role in the Netflix comedy Living with Yourself. If you haven't watched that, you need to. It's pretty great. He has a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor, and he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame back in 2015. And he was named part of the Forbes Celebrity 100 in 2019. Okay, cool. So I feel like we have an awful lot to go on here. So if he started the whole acting thing in 1992, we know that he left Sisters in 1995. He was in Clueless with Alicia Silverstone. He was also in Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, where are we going to jump in here? Where do we think this guy was turned? Was it shortly after Clueless? Did he catch the eye of a toreador? Or was it after Romeo and Juliet? What do we think here? Oh, he was in 200 Cigarettes, too. What a great movie. He was in The Cider House Rules. The Cider House Rules. He received a SAG nomination for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture. Oh, gosh. He was in so much. Oh, yeah. He played Phoebe's husband, Mike Hannigan, on Friends. This guy's done just about everything. Okay. Let us call it. Let's just say that it was during the filming of Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet with Leo DiCaprio in it. Let's say that is when he was turned. Okay, so that gives us 1996. If he was born in 69, 1996. Okay. It's always a little bit slow to start, but once you get rolling, it works out pretty well. And I mean, perhaps I'm overcomplicating things by trying to, make it measurably realistic for a game as fantastical as Vampire the Masquerade. I mean, that's a fair assessment, and, you're probably right, but we can start with his actual age being 27. I know this seems to be a little bit backwards to how we usually do it, but we are working with Paul Rudd here, so we don't want to get this wrong. So we'll go 27 if he was turned in 92. Now it's 2020, so 92, 2002, 2012, so 23. He's turned 23, so that makes him 50 is his true age. Okay. So year of death was 1992. Let's go 1996. 69. Okay, cool. Appearance. We're just going to put Paul Rudd. Because, Paul Rudd. He's adorable. Distinguishing features. Okay, no, we're not going to worry about all of that stuff right now. So it's time to go to the book. I have no idea who turned Paul Rudd yet. The sire question could be a bit of an ambivalent one for a little while. Okay, Toreador is the clan that we are going to put him with. Predator type, I feel like he is either an Osiris, and I also feel like even as a vampire, Paul Rudd is going to be a super nice guy. So probably, maybe even consensualist. You know what? Let's continue with his Hollywood super nice guy charms, and let's make him a consensualist for his predator type. That means that he has to have the okay from his prey before he can feed. I feel like that's fair for Paul Rudd. We need to go into our little book here. Our Toreador page. Okay, so the Toreador clan. They are the divas, the clan of the rose, the degenerates, the artists, the harlots, the hedonists, the sensationalists, the perverts. I mean, maybe not perverts so much for Paul Rudd. I feel like he's too nice of a guy to be too much of a pervert, but... so basically... what we get is, who are the Toreador? Clan Toreador has ever preached selectiveness in its rituals of the embrace. The clan elders stress time and again that the clan requires pioneers among the arts and every kind of avant-garde. The clan is at its strongest when comprised of the freshest thinkers and those who desire experimentation and aesthetic discovery. For this reason, many a Toreador emerge from the ranks of accomplished artists, both new and faded, but not all artists need to wield a brush. To the Toreador, art encompasses all forms of entertainment and stimulation. The clan courts the greatest actors, singers, writers, dancers, and even sex workers, if the degenerates believe in such mortals will offer something new to their clan. Despite the custom of embracing only the best, the Toreador fixation on beauty and innocence has caused many a diva to make a fledgling in haste. Many a moonlit night, new clan members have emerged as shallow hedonist one-hit wonders or just a stunning body with nothing else to offer. Ouch. The greatest mistakes are erased and forgotten. Still, the clan is diverse, its members considering the ensemble as a kaleidoscope of talent and beauty. This is why I feel like Paul Rudd, delivers here for this particular one. As a comedic actor, even in his more dramatic roles, he still brings a bit of a comedic charm. He still manages to find those moments. And I think that the ability to make people smile and feel better, just seeing Paul Rudd makes you feel better, right? So I think that might have been appealing to the Toreador who turned Mr. Paul Rudd. Up next on the GSMC ScIFi podcast, part of the GSMC podcast network, we will get into our archetypes for our Paul Rudd-inspired Vampire the Masquerade V5 character build.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. This is all happening on the GSMC Podcast Network. And our character build for Vampire the Masquerade V5, inspired by Paul Rudd, continues by selecting our archetypes. We need to look at our archetypes here and see what we can get. So we have the L'Artiste. The Toreador indulge in the beauty of all art forms and strive to be creators themselves. Whether competent in the strings of a violin, weaving notes as lustrous as the subtle glow of a crescent moon, or wielding a spray can to form a harsh, prismatic line on a back alley wall, this kindred is an artist revered intensely by their clan. I don't think that one fits for Paul Rudd. Stage manager. Without a puppeteer to pull the strings, the puppet would not know how to dance. This diva's fingers are constantly on the pulse of the night. They know everything happening at every club and bar worth a visit, and likely have great influence over several such places and the people who go there. Deeply connected to the city's social atmosphere, they have the knowledge to help others gain or lose the spotlight as they please. Maybe the gadabout. With charisma, social intellect, and a cunning smile, the world is yours to conquer. The gadabout hedonistic masters the art of manipulation, attraction, and empathy so well that even shy Canaanites desire the attention or take pleasure in watching as they effortlessly mingle into every clique and category. This Toreador fits into any profession in which handling customers, patients, or clients is key. They use every trick in the book to get their targets exactly where they want them. Perhaps. Patron of the arts. The patron is a collector of raw talent and promising beauty. Thespian spy. The Toreador love a performance, and the one who plays at being a spy knows how to pry valuable information, often taking more time than they need to properly enjoy the game. Perhaps overdramatic yet rarely suspected due to an affable nature, the thespian spy inserts themselves in multiple domains to entertain, observe, and compile libraries of information to exchange for other pleasures. That, I think, is the one that we are going to select for this Paul Rudd character build. The thespian spy. Because he should be a little bit dangerous. Okay. Still don't know about the sire yet. But we'll get to it. Also, are we just going to make the character Paul Rudd, or are we just going to call it Paul Rudd? All right, let's do it. Let's just go Paul Rudd. You know what? His charisma and his intelligence and his wits are going to be the major parts of this build, I think. But we're not there yet. But now we need to look at disciplines, and we need to pick two of them. So of the three disciplines, we have aspects. So the Toreador are ever on the hunt for exquisite experiences and use aspects to identify the most susceptible vessels and those who might, through their feelings and temperament, offer new tastes and sensations to the drinker during the feed. The Toreador is frequently using this discipline on other kindred, catering to their desires or antagonizing those with the truths that they should not know. It's a pretty good possibility. Celerity. The Toreador claim they have no combatants, but few move as swiftly as the degenerate, using celerity to cut an opponent to ribbons before they've even had a time to draw their own weapon. Toreador often use celerity to enhance artistic or performance skills. In feeding, they use the discipline to take what they need from a vessel and vanish before the mortal realizes the truth of what has occurred. And the third discipline that we can choose for our Paul Rudd-inspired vampire is presence. The Toreador mastered the discipline of presence, often using it in concert with aspects to manipulate the emotions of kindred and kind. Presence can guarantee the appreciative audience or cause the failure of another artist's. Some toreador will use the discipline to indulge in carnal pleasures with an unnaturally enthusiastic partner to lure a vessel into their arms and under their fangs. This member of the clan adores willing vessels, even if the willingness is supernaturally induced facade. Okay, so if we are going to use consensualist as Paul Rudd's predator type, I feel like using presence is not going to quite jive with his moral code. Again, I know, I've been saying it all along, but there are no heroes in Vampire the Masquerade. However, I think a Paul Rudd-inspired vampire is going to be about as close as we're going to get to that. So the two disciplines that we are going to pick for our character will be Auspex and Celerity. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to fill those into our sheet here. So we have Auspex and we have Celerity. And we get 2 in one and 1 in the other. So I think I'm going to go with 2 Auspex and 1 Celerity. I feel like that might make the most sense. Okay, the Clan Bane for the Toreador. This is one I think we missed a little bit with the Harley Quinn build from last week. But so the Clan Bane for Toreador. So the Toreador exemplify the old saying that art in the blood takes strange forms. They desire beauty so intensely that they suffer in its absence. While your character finds itself in less than beautiful surroundings, lose the equivalent of their bane severity and dice from their dice pool to use their disciplines. The storyteller decides specifically how the beauty or ugliness of the Toreador's environment, including clothing, blood, dolls, etc., penalizes them based on the character's aesthetics. That said, even devotees of the Ashen School never find normal streets perfectly beautiful. This obsession with aesthetics can also cause divas to lose themselves in moments of beauty, and a bestial failure often results in a rapt trance, as detailed in the compulsion rules on page 208. So, basically, our Toreador character is not going to want to be dirty, always going to want to be clean, will always be impeccably dressed, and will always be looking for beauty in their surroundings. And if they can't find any, that's when it's talking about the storyteller adding or taking away dice from the player's dice pool. So, Clan Bane is beauty above all else. This is a loose interpretation to be brief on the sheet. So, beauty above all else. Ugliness causes uncomfortable feelings. That's really minimizing how it does actually affect the Toreador, but I think for our Clan Bane notes here on the sheet, I think it's fine. We're just going to add the page number where you can find that, because, again, I like to have things where I could find them quickly during gameplay, and you can find that on page 91. So that's the Clan Bane. Alrighty. So cool. We've got a pretty good start. Still don't know who the sire is, though. Okay. I mean, should it be a studio executive? What's next? Ah, there it is. All right. Clan and sire. We have the clan. We don't know the sire yet. Attributes. Okay, we don't have those yet. We don't have our skills yet. We have our disciplines, 2 dots in one, 1 in the other. Perfect. So we remembered that. We have our predator type, which is the consensualist. We're going to go into more detail on that in just a little bit. And our attributes. Okay, so these are the 9 attributes that are at the top of your page. We need 1 attribute at 4, 3 at 3, 4 attributes at 2, and 1 at 1. So I think that for Paul Rudd, his charisma is going to be our level 4. Is going to get the 4 dots because huge for Paul Rudd. 2, 3, 4. Honestly, one of the most charismatic dudes I've ever seen in my life. We're going to put intelligence at 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to put wits at 3 as well because I feel like he will be great for that. And I think we should put maybe composure at 3. So that's 1 at 4, 3 at 3, 4 at 2. So we are going to go 2 strength. We're going to go 2 dex. We're going to go 2 stamina. We're going to go 2 manipulation. And our resolve will be our lone 1. I think this looks pretty good. All right, so strength 2, dex 2, stamina is 2, charisma is 4, manipulation is 2, composure is 3, intelligence is 3, wits are 3, and resolve is 1. And I think this works for a Paul Rudd-inspired character. I think Paul Rudd himself is an immensely and deeply intelligent guy. I think he's, as an improv actor, quite quick on his feet. So I think wits at 3 is important. Charisma at 4, I mean, that just goes without saying. Composure at 3 as well. He's an actor, so I feel like he would be good at covering up his immediate reactions to things. So that's why we went with composure at 3. I feel like it would take a lot to shake him. Manipulation has to be up there. He is a Toreador, so I put that at 2 along with strength, dex, and stamina. And resolve at 1. Had no choice. That's what I was down to. Now, the next thing we're going to do is look at skills, and I think we're going to make our decision, and then we're going to take a quick break. So for a Paul Rudd-inspired character, I think I want him to be quite balanced instead of jack of all trades or specialist. I think going with the balanced one is going to work pretty good. That's going to give us 3 skills at 3, 5 at 2, and 7 at 1. So he's going to be quite diverse when it comes to what he is capable of doing during gameplay. So we will pick out those skills next on the GSMC ScIFi podcast, part of the GSMC podcast network. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC ScIFi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. Today, oh honey, we are doing a Paul Rudd-inspired character build for Vampire the Masquerade V5. We have made a couple of decisions about this character so far. We have decided that Paul Rudd is a Toreador. We have given him a thespian spy part of the clan. We've made him a consensualist, which I feel like is important for his nice guy demeanor. So far, we have dropped his attributes down into place. We've got charisma at 4. We have composure, intelligence and wits all at 3. We have strength, dex, stamina, and manipulation all at 2. And resolve is at 1. So as we were jumping into the break, we were making a decision on which skill spread we were going to use. I think we were looking at balanced, and I think that's going to be the right way to do it, because you get 3 skills at 3, 5 at 2, and 7 at 1. So he's going to be pretty good at a wide variety of things. So let's look at this here. Let's pick out our 3 skills at 3. So we have, I think performance is going to be 3 skills, obviously. I think athletics, no. Brawl, no. Drive, firearms, melee, larceny, stealth. Let's put stealth at 3. And we need 1 more. Streetwise, subterfuge, academics, awareness. Ooh, maybe? No. Let's give him 3 in investigation, because the Toreador, I don't want to go awareness. Or do I? Should awareness be 3? Just thinking of Paul Rudd. Insight, maybe. Etiquette? Yeah, let's go etiquette, since he is a consensualist. Okay, so 5 skills at 2. I think we need to focus on some vampire-y kind of skills. So let's make Paul Rudd 2 in Streetwise. Thank you for marking on my sheet. I appreciate that. Okay, let's give him 2 in Brawl, because again, vampires. Let's give him 2 in Firearms. Sorry, Paul. Let's give him 2 in Intimidation. And let's give him 2 in Awareness. So that should be 4 at 2, right? Oh, 5 skills at 2. Okay, so let's add Insight. Perfect. And then we have 1 attribute at 1. There's going to be a few things that will change as we get into stuff. Let's give him Persuasion as the 1 skill. Okay, I'm happy with that. So then we have our Health is our Stamina plus 3. So Stamina is 2, so he gets 5 health. 2, 3, 4, 5. And our Willpower is Composure plus Resolve. So Composure is 3, Resolve is 1, so Willpower is 4. Which makes sense for a Toreador, because the effect of Beauty can strike at any moment. All right, cool. I enjoy how this is shaping up so far. So the disciplines, 2 dots in one, 1 dot in the other. We've already chosen Auspex and Celerity, but let's go to the book and see what a level 2 Auspex looks like. All right. So at level 2 Auspex, you get Heightened Senses, Sense the Unseen, Premonition, so he can tell a bit of the future. Interesting. Heightened Senses. The vampire's senses sharpen to a preternatural degree, giving them the ability to see in pitch darkness, hear ultrasonic frequencies, and smell the fear of cowering prey. Nice. For Sense the Unseen, the senses of the vampire become attuned to dimensions beyond the mundane, allowing them to sense presences otherwise hidden from the naked eye. This can be anything from another vampire using Obfuscate to someone using Auspex to spy on the character, to a ghost in the middle of the room. Dormant blood sorcery spells and rituals might also be found with this power at the storyteller's discretion. Cool. So, and then our level 2 skill from Auspex will be the vampire experiences flashes of insight. These may take the form of raised hackles, sudden inspiration, or even vivid visions. While never too precise, these visions can nudge the vampire out of harm's way or reveal a truth previously overlooked. Oh. And now Celerity. And I believe that our character build last week had Celerity as well. So I apologize if this feels like something that you have heard before. So the characteristics for Celerity, we have Cat's Grace and Rapid Reflexes. So the vampire gains balance and grace equal to and surpassing world-class trapeze artists. They can walk and even run across ledges and wires effortlessly and keep their balance on the slimmest of supports. And Rapid Reflexes, while their body still can't defy the law of nature, vampires with this power perceive events instantly and can react to them with superhuman abilities. They can observe incoming projectiles to the extent that they can attempt to dodge arrows and even bullets without available cover. Okay, good. I like that. Cat's Grace. And we get Cat's Grace and Rapid Reflexes. Perfect. Okay. So next up on the GSMC ScIFi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network, we are going to get into a little bit more of what our predator type is all about, and we'll see how that will add to or change our skills and attributes. We will deep dive into that next.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. This week, our character build for Vampire the Masquerade V5 is inspired by Paul Rudd. I mean, please, that guy hasn't aged since 1992. He's got to be a vampire, right? So we already have made a few decisions about our Paul Rudd-inspired character. We know that he has Auspex and Celerity as his disciplines. We have chosen skills to highlight as awareness, streetwise, persuasion, performance, intimidation, insight, etiquette, brawl, firearms, and stealth. For his attributes, we have charisma at 4. I mean, it's Paul Rudd, of course. At 3, we have intelligence, wits, and composure. At strength of 2, we have strength, dexterity, stamina, and manipulation, and resolve with 1. That's pretty much where we're at. Right now, we are diving into what his predator type is. And we picked consensualist earlier, just kind of off the top. But let's have a look at it and make sure that we shouldn't be going with Osiris. So I want to compare the two of them before we go on. Now, one of the things that you got to remember is that Paul Rudd is like the super nice guy of Hollywood, right? I mean, do you ever hear bad press about Paul Rudd? I didn't think so. So consensualist, here's what we have for that particular feeding type, predator type. You never feed against your victim's will. You masquerade as a representative of a charity blood drive as a blood-drinking kink lord in the real vampire community, or by actually telling your victims what you are and getting their permission to feed. The Camarilla call that last method a masquerade breach, but many anarch philosophers consider it an acceptable risk. You could have been anything in life, but a sex worker, a political organizer, or a lawyer would all be wary of feeding without consent. So you get an added specialty, you get medicine or persuasion, you gain 1 dot in auspex or fortitude, which would be cool. You gain 1 dot of humanity, you gain the dark secret flaw, which is a masquerade breacher because of the whole telling you of what I do, what I actually am kind of thing. And you gain the feeding flaw prey exclusion for non-consenting prey. Okay, so that's consensualist. For Osiris, this could be something that fits a little bit better. All right, so an Osiris as a predator type. You are a celebrity among mortals, or else you run a cult, a church, or something similar. You feed from your fans or worshippers who treat you as a deity. You always have access to easy blood, but followers breed problems with authorities, organized religion, and indeed the Camarilla. In life, you might have been a DJ, a writer, a cultist, a preacher, or a LARP organizer. I could see Paul Rudd as a LARP organizer for some reason. Isn't that funny? Anyway, so you get an added specialty of occult or performance. Specific to the entertainment field would be performance. Occult would be specific tradition. You gain 1 dot in blood sorcery or presence. So he would gain a dot in presence because he's not a Tremere, so the blood sorcery doesn't apply here. 3 dots between fame and herd backgrounds, and you spend 2 dots between the enemies and mythic flaws. So some of the other predator types, Alley Cat, combative assault feeder, no, he's not beating people up. A bagger, though. You steal, buy, or otherwise procure cold blood rather than hunt, relying on the black market or your skills as a burglar or ambulance chaser. Perhaps you still work the night shift at a hospital. Ventrue may not pick this predator type. Okay, so you get an added specialty of larceny or streetwise. You gain 1 dot of blood sorcery, which doesn't apply here because we're not looking at Tremere or obfuscate. You gain the feeding merit Iron Gullet, which means you can actually eat food, but you do have to expel it before you can go in for your rest. And you gain the enemy flaw. So either someone believes you owe them, or there's another reason to keep you off of the streets. Okay, Blood Leech, definitely not. Cleaver. You feed covertly from mortals. Perhaps you could do this from co-stars. Maybe this is it. So the Cleaver. You feed covertly from your or someone else's mortal family and friends with whom you still maintain ties. The most extreme Cleavers adopt children, marry a human, or try to maintain a family life as long as they can. Add your family to the relationship map. That's not something that we have covered so far in our Vampire the Masquerade stuff, but that's something that you can talk to your storyteller about, okay? Cleavers often go to great lengths to keep the truth of their condition from their family, but some also maintain unwholesome relationship with their own kin. The Camarilla forbids taking a human family in this fashion, and it frowns on cleavers as masquerade breaches waiting to happen. Wiser kindred may masquerade your family for your own good if they find out your secret and care about what happens to you. So you add the specialty of persuasion or subterfuge. You gain 1 dot of domination or animalism. You gain a dark secret flaw and a herd advantage. I think we're going to actually go Cleaver. I was sure it was going to be consensualist. But I think this fits because he would have an entire movie crew, around him all the time. He would have a plethora of co-stars. I think that is going to be the way that we go. Cleaver is going to be the predator type. I haven't done that one yet, so that's great. All right. Now, because of that, we get to add some other stuff. So we can add to persuasion or subterfuge. We don't have any subterfuge, and we already have 1 in persuasion. So I think we're going to add the subterfuge because we want to be able to cover things up really well as a cleaver. Okay. Gets a dot of dominate or animalism. So I think we're pretty well familiar at this point with what animalism is. Let's go with what dominate is. Let's go and look at animalism because it's definitely one that I haven't looked at either. The characteristics for this one. By default, animalism powers involving animals can only be used on vertebrates. Additionally, any use of the ability or on herbivores adds 1 to difficulty of a skill roll involved. When blood bonding an animal, the vampire can make it a familius, forming a mental link with it and facilitating the use of other animalism powers. While this power does not allow two-way communication with the animal, it can follow simple verbal instructions such as stay and come here. It attacks in defense of itself and its master, but cannot otherwise be persuaded to fight something it would not normally attack. So you would get that, and you would get sense the beast. The vampire can sense the beast present in mortals, vampires, and other supernaturals, gaining a sense of their nature, hunger, and hostility. Yeah, I think we're going to stick with dominate. Honestly. Okay, so dominate. So most dominate powers require eye contact with the victim. Once they establish contact, dominate holds the gaze of the victim until their user conveys their command or commands, barring interference, of course. Catching the eye of someone actively attempting to avoid the vampire's gaze requires a contest of the user's resolve and intimidation with the target's wits and awareness. It is, of course, impossible to catch the eye of someone squeezing their eyes shut or wearing a blindfold, but that person should be easy prey using other tactics. Okay, so we would get, level 1, Cloud Memory and Compel. We've talked about them before, but just a refresher. Just by uttering the phrase forget, this is for Cloud Memory, the user can make the dominated victim forget the current moment as well as the last few minutes, enough to mask a supernatural feeding or a chance meeting. No new memories are formed, and if pressed, the victim realizes they have a few minutes missing. With Compel, with eye contact, the vampire can issue the victim a single action command, no longer than a short sentence, to be obeyed to the letter. It must be possible to complete the command in a single turn. The storyteller designs whether to interrupt ambiguous commands in an unexpected or unfavorable way. Alternatively, the command simply confuses the victim and it fails. So no roll is required for that. We do have for Cloud Memory, it's a Charisma and Dominate versus Wits and Resolve. No roll is required. Yeah, I think we're going to take that because wouldn't it be interesting to find out that you met Paul Rudd but have no memory of it? That would be interesting. Okay, so Dominate. We have 1 of those, and we get Cloud Memory, and we get Compel. Okay. Super cool. So we have Auspex, Celerity, and Dominate. You know, even though he's going to be pretty new as far as his generation goes for vampires, he's looking like he's pretty tough, really. Okay, so while we're at it, we should just skip a little bit and we'll go to the convictions and touchstones. So, for Paul Rudd, you know what? I don't even know that we need to really go through a whole lot of it. We can just pick humanist. Thou shalt not kill, save in self-defense. Thou shalt not enslave or torture, and thou shalt not harm the innocent. That sounds very Paul Rudd to me. And I don't know that I can come up with anything better. And if I'm not convinced that I can come up with anything better, it might be the best idea to just roll with it. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. Coming up next on the GSMC ScIFi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network, we will get into the flaws and advantages that we have with our Paul Rudd-inspired vampire for Vampire the Masquerade V5. We'll be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Okay, welcome back to the GSMC ScIFi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. Continuing with our Paul Rudd build. So far, we have him as a Toreador. And we have a few disciplines, 3 of them actually, that came through for our Paul Rudd-inspired character. We have Auspex, Celerity, and Dominate. Dominate we got from our Predator type, which is Cleaver. So what we want to do now is touch on your backgrounds, merits, and flaws, because I feel like this is, particularly for a Paul Rudd-inspired character, is going to be where you really get the best look at how your character will play out during role play and stuff like that around the table. So let's have a little flip to our flaws, merits and flaws. Okay. Now, the real question is, before we get too deep into this, once we picked our Predator type, did we have... okay, so we have a Dark Secret flaw, and we have Herd Advantage 2. Okay. We gained Dark Secret flaw 1 and Herd Advantage 2. So, okay, so what does that mean? Good question. Let's read a bit and find out, shall we? Okay, flaw 1 is you owe a big debt to bad people or have made yourself generally odious. Alternatively, your spouse, lover, or close family member has infamy, which would definitely be a bit of a detraction there. So, okay, so that's your Dark Secret flaw. Now, the Herd merit is because you are the Cleaver Predator type, you are surrounded by people who you can feed from just about all times. So the risk of you breaching the Masquerade is quite a bit lower. So that's where the herd thing comes from. And the herd number tells you how many people you would have. So let's just look at this. So 4 to 7 vessels, half of whom share one residence that you pick when you buy this advantage. Example, aging devotees of the city's fading goth or Bangra scene follow club scenesters and large Cleaver families. So it just means that, again, you're just surrounded by people who are willing to let you feed for whatever reasons at just about all times. So that's good. Okay, so I believe it's 7 advantages and 2 more flaws that we have to look at. Let me just double check. I feel like that's right. Toreador. Advantages. Send 7 points on advantages and take 2 points of flaws in addition to the ones gained by your predator type. Okay, so 7 advantages. I feel like Mask is not going to be a good one at all because there's no hiding that you are, in fact, Paul Rudd. So that's not going to work out for us. Fame. Are there advantages to fame? Okay, how about most people in the country know your name at least? That gives you an advantage of 3. So that just leaves us with 4. Okay. So that means most people in the country know your name at least. So instead of writing that all out, I'm just going to put page 187 on my form because you should always have the book when you sit down to the table. And if not the book, the PDF, because you are constantly going to be looking stuff up. Okay. So that means we have 2 more advantages that we can pick at 2 or 1 that we can pick at 4. So let's see what we can come up with here for a Paul Rudd inspired character. How about allies and enemies? Advantage 4. Deadly mortal, a gifted mortal with magic or other supernatural powers, or a well-armed group of gifted mortals, i.e. private security squad or lawyer contingent. For Paul Rudd, yeah, I think that's going to be a thing, because Paul Rudd would need lawyers and whatnot, right? So allies and enemies. Perfect. So that's our 2 advantages that we're going to pick, and we have to pick 1 more flaw at 2. I think that we are going to go with some mythic merits and flaws because I think that it would be really fun to explore Paul Rudd's flaws through like the myths of folklore for vampires. So, for example, I could take 2 points at 1 and he could become sensitive to ultraviolet light and holy water, or we could have crossing visible running water, or crossing a threshold into a home uninvited, garlic, wild roses, spilled seeds you haven't counted. What? That's a flaw? That's a strange one. I've never heard that piece of vampire mythos. Spilled seeds you haven't counted? Seriously? That's a thing. Okay, well, let's make that a flaw 1 for Paul Rudd because, what? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Okay, so mythic flaw 1, and I'm just going to put beside it spilled seeds, and we'll put down the page number, page 182. Okay, and we need 1 more, so another mythic flaw. Let's see. Let's make folkloric bane. You take aggravated damage from a folkloric bane. Folkloric banes include ultraviolet light, silver or silver-plated weapons, or holy water. It has the same damage as fire. So let's give Paul Rudd some ultraviolet light. Flaw. Okay, touchstones and convictions. Right, we decided to go with the humanity package because I don't think that there's a better set that I can put together. So that works for me there. Your chronicle tenets, that's going to come as you sit at your table. And we need to look at our blood potency. So now we need to figure out our sire stuff. Okay, so let's imagine for a second here. Who would have access to Paul Rudd? I mean, do we want to say it's a talent agent? Is that a little too on the nose? Maybe not talent agent. Perhaps wardrobe designer because of Toreador. Well, you know, constantly wanting to look at beautiful things. Ooh, I like that, actually. Let's do that. Let's go with a head of a costuming department at one of the movie companies that Paul Rudd has done movies for. Okay, cool. We'll do that. And I think that Paul Rudd's sire is a female. Let's name her Rhoda. Yep. Rhoda Reed. R-H-O-D-A. Reed. R-E-I-D. Perfect. Now, if he was turned in 1992, there are specific pieces of this for our character builds. Okay. So, Sea of Time. Together with your storyteller and other players, decide if you are children embraced within the last 15 years. That is not the case. Embraced between 1940 and a decade ago. That's where we are. Blood potency 1 and 15 experience points. So let's make him 13th generation. I believe that's what the Harley Quinn build was as well. Okay, so 13th generation. He gets a blood potency of 1. Okay, cool. So now we need to find, there's this little chart in this book, and I always lose it. Chart. There it is. Okay, blood potency of 1. Supernatural damage mended. Okay, so mend amount is 1. Our discipline power bonus is none. Our rouse reroll is level 1. Bane severity is 1. And our feeding penalty, animal and bagged blood slakes half hunger. So you would have to do that twice to get a full hunger point back. So that's fine. So that all works. Blood surge. Add 1 die. All right, let's just go with add 1, because for some reason it's not letting me fill that in all the way on the sheet. So we're going to do that. So that gets us our Paul Rudd character. We will summarize our Paul Rudd character build for Vampire V5 next on the ScIFi podcast, part of the GSMC podcast network.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse Ross, and we are putting the finishing touches, the final read-through on our Paul Rudd character build, and I think it looks pretty good. We chose Paul Rudd because, well, arguably one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, according to everything that you hear, so he also seems to never age, so it seemed like a natural choice. There are a couple of things that seemed obvious when I wanted to take an actor and turn them into a vampire. One is the clan that they would play, Toreador. If you disagree, please explain your point to me on Twitter. I'll be looking for it at GSMC_sci-fi. I'll be looking for your comments. So, Toreador, we went with Thespian Spy as his archetype, and his predator type is Cleaver. His sire was someone named Rhonda Reed. She was the head of a costume design department for one of the movie companies that he's worked for. He's the 13th generation. His attributes, because it's Paul Rudd, charisma had to be off the chain, right? So we went with 4 charisma. We have 3 in intelligence, wits, and composure. He's got level 2 in strength, dexterity, stamina, manipulation, and 1 in resolve. So that's your attributes breakdown for this one. We actually didn't end up with a whole lot of bonus things. Actually, that's a lie, because we haven't put down our 15 extra points. It's 3 times the level that you want to boost your skills up to. We can take on 5 at 1. So let's give us some occult. Let's add a leadership point. So 1, 2, let's add drive, let's add melee, and let's add survival. And that pretty much takes care of it, right? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Perfect. So that's taken care of. That gives us a little bit more skills. So our skill spread, we went with balanced. So there isn't really one skill that's above all of the rest of them. You end up with 3 points at 3 skills at 3rd level. So that includes stealth, performance, and etiquette for Paul Rudd. You end up with a whole bunch at level 2. For level 2, we have brawl, firearms. We went with streetwise. We went with intimidation and insight and awareness. Now, we did end up with a 1 dot in occult, and that was because of our predator type, I believe. That gets us... Oh, right. I was going to pick a politics because I feel like somebody as smooth talking as Paul Rudd must be kind of good at that. So our level 1 stuff is drive, melee, survival, subterfuge, persuasion, leadership, occult, and politics. So I think that works out well. His disciplines, he's got level 2 aspects, which gives us 3 different skills, which include heightened senses, sense the unseen, and premonition. Celerity, we've got level 1. That gives us 2 different abilities there. So we've got Cat's Grace and Rapid Reflexes. And we could choose Dominate, and I believe that came from our feeding type as well. Our predator type, sorry. So that gives us Cloud Memory and Compel for the Dominate skill set. Our blood potency is 1. We're only 13th generation, so that's fine. Our true age is 51. Apparent age is 23. Date of birth was in 69. Date of death was in 1992. Right around the time he was working on the Romeo and Juliet movie, I believe. Appearance looks like Paul Rudd. Fantastic. Okay. Our touchstones and convictions. We went with the humanity spread. I couldn't come up with anything that made more sense than that for Paul Rudd. Basically, nice guy. Clan Bane for Toreador is beauty above all else. Ugliness causes uncomfortable feelings. So even like dirt on their clothes, if they are in a particularly not pretty part of town, they're very uncomfortable. All of those details on page 91. Our backgrounds, merits, and flaws. So we have the dark merit flaw, which means cleaver. We also have the herd advantage because Paul Rudd is constantly surrounded by humans and constantly surrounded by people who may potentially be willing to have him feed off of them. Fame advantage because most people in the country know his name. Allies and enemies advantage. That means that he's got some allies like lawyers and things like that are behind him. Mythic flaw for spilled seeds. Basically, he can't cross a space that has spilled seeds in them unless he's counted all of the seeds. Very strange, but okay, we'll take that one. And another mythic flaw for ultraviolet light. So coming out in the daytime may hurt Paul Rudd a little bit, or at least our vampire inspired by Paul Rudd. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you next week on the GSMC ScIFi podcast, which again is part of the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Melinda Barkhouse-Ross. I'll talk to you next week with another Vampire the Masquerade character build. I believe we've only got 2 left that are in the 5th version of the Vampire the Masquerade books. So we're getting close to the end, and we will change topics and probably get back into some more Dungeons & Dragons kind of stuff. That's more my wheelhouse. So this has been a lot of fun, and I hope that if you are playing Vampire the Masquerade, you've been able to find a little bit of inspiration around some of the stuff that we've been talking about. And really, we would appreciate it no matter what podcast platform you're listening to us on. Drop us a 5-star review. Leave a couple of comments. Let us know how you're feeling about the Vampire the Masquerade character builds. Are you into it? Do you think you could do a better job? I'm sure that you can. I do not pretend to be an expert in this one. But I hope that it is inspiring you a little bit for your next character creation. Also, would love to hear from you on Twitter with your thoughts or even suggestions for people that you think would be great character builds for Vampire the Masquerade. For the GSMC ScIFi podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network, I'm Melinda Barkhouse-Ross, and I will talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts ScIFi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.